Crafted in the South, crafted in the South, crafted in the South, James.
A special edition to close out season 1 live in glorious Technicolor.
Yes.
Technology has come to the podcast.
We got video and we're so happy.
And sound.
I'm so happy we got it, James. You know, people could see our face now.
I've had to tie my corset up particularly tight to pinch the waist in. I don't know if it's worked. I'm sure someone will tell me in the comments if it hasn't.
This is how we look like.
Yeah, nobody wants to see this really, do we? Well, brethren, the reason that we've got this special video session today is because it's the last podcast of season 1. We've done 9 or 10,
11,
11 maybe, a good slack handful of episodes this year, and we've met some fantastic people. But the reason we're doing this is because the podcast started with a fascinating sit down between you and the Provincial Grand Master, and we're pleased to say he's joining us again today to close out season 1. He's given up some of his time for a year in review discussion.
It's going to be a good one. So we'll be touching upon the One Journey, One Organization theme, and pretty much our new. Tell me, help me out here. It's our new initiative.
It's the new initiative,
bringing the craft and Royal Arch together, and we're going to explore some really good themes. And you know how we're going to move forward, because it is a continuation of craft.
Yeah, and perhaps the PGM will answer some questions that we know are out there.
Yeah,
about that initiative. Maybe dispel some myths, and perhaps even talk about some of the things that we've seen in the press recently about Freemasonry.
Yeah,
there's a whole world of questions we can ask him.
Yeah, and we're really excited for 2026. We're going to explore some, even deeper themes. James, you're talking about also. What do you want to explore for 2026?
So for the podcast, we're gonna dive deep into the Holy Royal Arch. We might follow an initiate from his initiation all the way through his passing and his raising, and then his exaltation into the Holy Royal Arch, and perhaps a few other companion orders as well. Yeah. So we're going to explore the big wide world of Freemasonry next year in a way that we perhaps haven't in this first season.
Yeah. So last year it was pretty much covering how the executive is run for Hampshire and Isle of Wight. We're gonna get more of personal stories within Hampshire, and we're really excited about that. And what was one of your favorite episodes of this year that really called out to you, or just gave you a different perspective of Freemasonry?
So every guest we had was fantastic last year. I learned so much talking to those people. There are 2 that stand out to me. The first was `𝗬𝗵, the Order of Women Freemasons, who gave us an insight into a part of Freemasonry that we just don't touch. And some of it was interesting to learn both the differences and the commonalities between the 2 orders. That was really interesting. And I think perhaps our last episode as well, where we had Maurice Doe and Paul Hilliard, the Assistant Provincial Grand Master and Area Chairman for North Central, to hear about their journeys in Freemasonry and how they manage a big chunk of the province. Yeah,
I have to agree with you. The episode with about female Freemasonry gave me a huge perspective, a different perspective of Freemasonry, and that it is for both men and women. And I really connected with the emotional side of Freemasonry that Sue, let us in of what Freemasonry means to her. And I thought that was a very powerful episode, because that's applicable to female Freemasonry and also for male Freemasonry as well. One other episode that I really liked was talking about the circulars, because I think it's very important in Hampshire to go visiting. And I know it's something that we hear every single meeting or festival board, but it is, guys. And this is there's a theme that I like to talk about, and it's called Masonic coincidences. And there is this thing of when you start visiting, you'll probably have a connection that you didn't know with brethren that you have never met. And because you just have a simple conversation. And this is where the true magic happens in Freemasonry. And you're like, oh my God, I'm part of something freaking awesome. And visit, because you learn, making new connections, and it's just a good time.
Yeah, it is. Before we introduce our special guest for today, we need to give thanks particularly to Creation DMC, who are providing all the technological assistance and making this video happen. They will be tagged in our social posts. And if you need any video assistance for anything in life, those are the people to talk to. straight to it. We are joined today, as we said, by the Provincial Grand Master, the Right Worshipful Provincial Grand Master and Grand Superintendent, Jonathan Whitaker. John, welcome back to Crafted in the South. Thank you for joining us again.
Welcome back.
Thank you very much indeed. It doesn't seem a year since I was being interviewed by you in the provincial office last time.
Yeah, we can't believe it.
But that was without a screen, which was much better.
Yeah, we got a whole beautiful setup for you here. We want Hampshire and the Isle of Wight to see you, and it's the important things that we're going to talk about today.
Great.
Yeah, so James, start us off.
It's been a busy year for Freemasonry in the province. Could you, to start us off, pick out some of your highlights, things worthy of refreshing?
Sure. I think the first thing to say is that in terms of numbers overall, I'm really, really pleased with where we are at the moment. So the craft numbers are really stabilizing. We're not in growth yet, but they are really stabilizing. So we're getting a great number of initiates coming in. We still have a real problem around retention. So we're still losing guys that we've brought into the craft and understand age and frailty and people moving away. But we're not so good sometimes at looking after those that have joined and then keeping them interested. You know, we give them this great initiation and welcome. And then sometimes, once we've got them in the door, we don't always look after them. And certainly from a retention point of view, we've got more to do. But, you know, I'm pleased with progress.
Why do you think that happens, you think?
I mean, I noticed it. If I can tell you a story, I was in a lodge recently and I saw a fellow craft with a steward's collar on, sat on his own, about 20 foot from the lodge secretary, 10 foot from the door, the inner guard. And we had the opening ode and he didn't have the words and he looked a bit lost. And no one spoke to him because obviously we had a ceremony. And then in the bar afterwards, he stood on his own in the bar. So I went over to him, introduced myself. And it was amazing because I went over, suddenly the DC was with me and other people were with me as well. And it turned out that his proposer and seconder weren't present that evening. One was away working, one was ill. And he was just left. And he'd been in Masonry about 7-8 months. He was a steward. He didn't really know what he was doing. And I just thought, we've missed an opportunity. You know, why have we left him to sit on his own? And my visiting officers have heard this story, because I told them the visiting officer mess recently. And that shouldn't happen. And it's no one's fault because we're all busy on the night. We're all doing jobs. But, you know, if we continue to let that guy sit on his own and not talk to him in the bar, then, you know, is he going to keep coming back? So that's a tiny example of, you know, we've got to do more to keep people involved and interested.
I agree with you. I think sometimes they're the most important people in the room at times until they start their journey where they could go by themselves.
Sure.
I've seen that as well. And I agree with you. Sometimes we're so in the lodge, put on a great ceremony, but I think everyone needs to be a mentor.
Yeah, I agree with you.
And I think that is probably the most gratifying part of Freemasonry, when you become a mentor to a younger Mason, and that you know that you contributed to their journey. Sure. And yeah, I think that we all need to have the responsibility to be that brother, to make those new guys. Have them become the next generation.
And the reason I'm still involved in doing what I'm doing is because somebody, or in fact it wasn't somebody, it was 3 or 4 guys were mentoring me when I joined my lodge and my chapter. Yeah. And that's why I'm still here, because I had a really good grounding. And, you know, people cared. And I think sometimes we're just so busy with, you know, someone doesn't turn up, someone has to occupy a job in the lodge. And, you know, are they equipped to do it? You know, do they know what they're doing? And then someone else gets left out. So it's tough.
You know, something interesting that I'll just thought about right now. Sometimes, like, how do you become a mentor? Just remember a brother that took out his time to help you do something.
Sure.
I see James does it with some brethren. I do it. We have Paul as our mentors. I mean, pretty much that's how it's supposed to be. Take the initiative to show something. We're not saying 24/7, just one thing. That is just what we need to do. It's just one little thing to ensure the next generation for the good of Freemasonry.
And, you know, you don't need a collar that says mentor to be a mentor.
Absolutely.
It's everybody's job.
Yeah. And there's something to be said, I think, for you know, it seems to me in my short experience that the lodges that look the most sustainable and that are thriving more than their neighbours are the ones who have active social lives outside the temple.
Absolutely.
So they go out, they have dinner, they go to the pub. We went bowling last year. You know, they are friends, not just brother Masons. They do things outside the temple. So when they come into the Masonic Centre, it's just an extension of that social group. It's not something you do once a month to tick a box.
And if you haven't got part of that and you're new, and there's gaps, you know, because your lodge is only meeting 5-6 times a year, then what do you do in the interim? You know, there's this too big a gap of nothing happening. So that's craft. In terms of Royal Arch, you know, Royal Arch numbers are really good. Lots of 150 exaltations so far this year. Lots of joining members
There's a buzz
into the chapter. There is a buzz. And you know, I guess having made the decisions as to bring the two together, one journey, one organisation. So we are not alone in terms of the number of provinces that are now double heading. The PGM is the Grand Superintendent. So out of the 48 provinces, 42 are now double-headed. And that's changed over the years. You know, we've got 84 chapters, 240 lodges. That's a lot to look after. But one of the things I've done is brought in a joint executive. So chapter executive met separately, craft met separately. We sat on each other's executive. One of the things I've had to do is bring the executive together so that we have a monthly meeting at the provincial office with craft and chapter, and the agenda is a joint one. And it's good for both sides to understand what's happening. And the more we do that, you know, we have a provincial secretary who's also the provincial 𝗖𝗿𝗳𝘁𝗵. So that's joined. We have a comms officer who's the same in craft and same in chapter. The provincial almoner is the same in craft and same in chapter. And there will be an opportunity to look at more of the provincial roles to double head them, which hopefully will give some sort of consistency.
And do you think that, so Roddy and I are both in the same chapter, and we're both companions. We're not excellent companions yet. Right. And many of those who have been through the chair of chapter have said that if you want to finish or complete the Masonic story, it is essential to take those final steps. Would you say that is true, that you don't get the full story until you've been a Z, or is there an element of that which is used to drive attendance?
I think the first step is to say that, you know, we've got 7,700 craft masons. We only have about 3,000 Royal Arch Masons. So there's your gap straight away.
Yes.
And the question you've got to ask yourself is, why have we not got 7,700 craft and Royal Arch Masons? And that often goes right back to when people were first interviewed, had first discussion about joining Masonry. My proposer told me very clearly 39 years ago that I had to go through two things. I had to do three things in one place. That's called the craft. I do one thing in another place, and that's called the chapter. Now, I was sat in his front room with another guy talking about Masonry, and I had no idea what he was talking about. But it was three in one place and one in another. Three in one place is the craft, one in another place is the chapter. So in my head, before I joined, and that's what my proposer was doing, I knew that's what I had to do. Now, we're calling it the narratives.
Yes.
All right? We're saying there are 4 ceremonies in pure and ancient Freemasonry. So you do 3 in the craft, and you then do your 4th ceremony in the chapter. We probably lost our way a little bit a number of years ago when we said to craft masons, like, you join chapter when you feel the time is right for you. And of course, the danger with that is that the time might not be right for a lot of people. They just put things off. So now we're saying that there are 4 ceremonies in pure and ancient Freemasonry, and we tell people that right at interview and before interview, then that's their expectation. And that means there is a additional cost because it's another set of meals and a bit of regalia, but it's not exhaustively expensive. And if you know that from day one and you've got the right mentoring, then hopefully we'll build the numbers.
And does that imply that there is a future at some point where, rather than have standalone chapters, lodges will simply open in the 4th degree or open as a chapter, and each lodge will have its own chapter?
It's a great question, because a number of people have said to me since I was installed, this is a craft takeover, and we're going to end up doing exaltations in craft lodges, which were done hundreds of years ago. Absolutely not. Categorically not. the Pro Grand Master and the Pro First Grand Principal, Jonathan Spence, who of course is a doubleheader,
Yes,
has made it absolutely clear that we're separate orders with separate ceremonies, and we've got 2,500 chapters operating, so we need to keep that separate. But as we wear the Royal Arch Jewel in the craft, we are joined up. You're told, aren't you? In order to do that fourth ceremony, you're regaining the secrets that were lost.
and on that point, so having this now closer relationship, which is natural,
Yep.
at the end of the day, do you expect or do you see a new Mason evolving? Because if I'm coming as an initiate and I already know there's going to be 4 ceremonies, and after that 4th ceremony, what does that make Mason look like? What is his experience? I think it's quite fascinating, interesting, and there's more engagement in when you're in the Royal Arch. There's a different type of experience in the Royal Arch.
Yeah.
I'll leave it with you because I do have a really interesting anecdote of an exaltation that we had this week.
Okay. Well, I think, the Royal Arch ceremony is about looking at yourself and your relationship with others. And I think until you experience it, you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah.
And to say to somebody who has not been told that there are 4 ceremonies, that actually there's something else they've got to join, and you haven't let them know and you haven't painted a picture for them, they are going to be suspicious and say, well, what's the point in doing it? Once you've done it, I think like everything in Freemasonry, when you start progressing and taking part in the ceremonies, so you actively take part, you're doing bits of ritual and you're involved, you start to understand the reason why. And, too often we say to people, well, we can't tell you, we don't want to spoil it for you. Don't go online and look at it, just experiencing it. And the whole point about the companionship is to experience that. And it is very different.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more. We had an exaltee, if you want to say, David Oz on Wednesday in 𝗬𝗲𝗳𝗁𝗲 chapter. And in the ceremony, obviously I won't reveal anything, the look of his face when he came into the order was, it's the reaction that I experienced. And it was that you're now in a companionship. And he goes, oh, wow. And the smile that he had, it was so organic. It was quite beautiful, because I feel sometimes as Masons, we could get a little bit jaded and think, oh, it's only the 3 degrees and that's it. Freemasonry always surprises you, and it will surprise you in 30 years, 100%. And I think that's why the Royal Arch, because I'll be really frank, sometimes as a Mason, I was like, okay, I'm going to go into the Royal Arch because I was told I was supposed to. And I really didn't understand it. I really didn't understand the Royal Arch. And after reading the ritual, experiencing it 5 times, I'm like, I get it now.
I mean, you made me think. I joined the Royal Arch because that's what my proposer wanted me to do.
Yeah.
And I did it. I sat as a steward for 5 years in the Royal Arch. And if I'm honest, I didn't understand it. I didn't really enjoy it. It was only when I was involved in the ceremony and one of the big parts in the ceremony that I then started to understand it. And I think the difference now is that we are involving companions and craft masons to get involved. They're getting involved straight away. They're doing small pieces.
Yes.
So it was, you weren't allowed to split the ceremony up when I first joined. It wasn't shared as much as it is now. You've got to do that to involve people, which comes back to our retention issue that we discussed.
And this is what happened on Wednesday. We had a lot of companions being, they shared the ritual. And it was the first time I did it as well. I'm like, oh, but just living the ritual makes you understand it. And like, you're right, it's so important. And I think we need to open our minds in that way and have the brethren work out. Work the ritual. It's the way you have to live Royal Arch through experience.
Yeah, I think also there are people who don't like it, and you have to respect that.
Yeah.
But there are also people who absolutely adore the Royal Arch more so than the craft, and it becomes their thing.
Yes.
And traditionally, there'll be some Royal Arch Masons who will not like the introduction of some of the new ritual that we're doing. because it's a shorter ritual. And all I'm saying to chapters is, look, the current ceremonies are a very long ceremony.
They are.
And actually, we know we need to keep people involved. We need to share the ritual, as I said. But there's a shorter ceremony that you can do in 45, 50 minutes, which still involves people and has the same meanings. It just doesn't cover all of the lectures. But the lectures can be done on another occasion. And, you know, I learned the long old way, learning a lecture, 6, 7 pages and doing it once. In that year, I was in one of the principal offices. And I sweated that and did it. But that's what we had to do in my chapter to get to the next step.
Yeah.
If you said that to a new companion now, they'd say, no thanks.
I agree. Yes.
So all I say to chapters when out visiting is that please look at the new ritual, go and see it demonstrated somewhere. And we are finding the Provincial Grand Stewards chapter in the province are demonstrating it. Other chapters are adopting it.
Is there a different name for that ritual?
Well, it's called the Savage. It's based on the Savage Club ritual, but we're calling it, you know, 𝗵𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁 ritual.
All right.
There are many different forms of chapter ritual, but the shorter version is the easiest way to describe it. And I think, you know, chapters need to make up their own mind. But I would say don't close your eyes. Just go and have a look at it and see what you think.
Oh, fantastic.
You said earlier that in respect to the membership challenge, retention is as much as or more of a problem than getting new members through the door. Yeah. Is that the same in chapter? Do you find that a lot of people join chapter and then, because one of the things that occurs to me is, I've only been in chapter for a year now, is that whether you join after you become a master mason, or indeed I've seen some exalted after they've been through the chair of their craft lodge, you go from having a very good idea, or indeed if you've come out the chair being intimately aware of everything that goes on in craft lodge, back to knowing absolutely nothing. You don't know the layout, you don't know the offices, you can't follow the ceremony in your head, and it's all new again. And I suspect for longer serving Masons, that can be quite an uncomfortable experience.
Yeah, and I think, you know, there are other companion orders which they may have been attracted to, again, because their friends talked about them, or they were described, you know, and they interested them. So I think, you know, the journey is very clear. I have a fantastic working relationship and friendship with the heads of the companion orders. And we're very clear, craft, chapter, and then the rest of the companion orders. And, you know, we have very, very committed heads of companion orders who are also very strong craft and chapter Masons, which is good because we have to support each other. Yeah. You know, I have a heads of order lodge, and I meet the heads of order once a year for lunch, and we're regularly in contact with each other all the time. Because that might be your love. You know, being a Knight Templar priest may be your love. You know, there are only about 120 in the province, but that may be your love. Mark may be your love, but we're all craft Masons.
Absolutely.
And my hope is that more of the craft Masons become chapter Masons. On
that point, how about these guys, our brethren, that have been 20, 30 years of Mason and they're not Royal Arch? How do we get them in?
So I said, it's a blooming good question. I said to a mate of mine, you know, why did you join the Mark 30 years ago and you didn't join the chapter? And he said, well, because his neighbour was in the Mark and not in the chapter. I think it's really hard, actually, because once you're in a routine, for the reasons that you've said, you know, they've progressed through craft and maybe other orders, and then they've got to start again. I think all we do is we just say to them, come and experience it. Yeah. Just come and experience it. Yeah. You don't know what you don't know, do you?
Exactly.
But I also say to them, tongue in cheek, you know, you still have the substituted secrets. And you haven't got the real secrets.
Oh, wow.
And pure and ancient Masonry.
So from a practical perspective then, what changes do you foresee in the future in terms of better representation of the Royal Arch in a craft lodge? Some people have asked questions around the wearing of chapter regalia in a craft lodge. Yeah. Is it likely to, is the practical impact of One Journey, One organisation likely to go beyond the administrative level where people take on two hats?
We won't be wearing Royal Arch regalia in our craft lodges. Right? As I said at the start, we're two separate orders. We wear the Royal Arch jewel. We have a Royal Arch representative in every craft lodge. And now we've given the Royal Arch rep something to do in terms of saying, actually, we want you to read from the narrative after the first, second, and third degree. So if a brother's done his second degree, the Royal Arch Rep stands up at the end of the ceremony, and it's a very short script, a couple of paragraphs, and it says basically, congratulations, you've done your second ceremony, you've got 2 to go. So already, we're keeping that momentum going in terms of, I've not finished yet, I'm halfway through my journey. There are things that we can do. Royal Arch chapters do things like, a Dine a Friend night for Royal Arch chapter, Dine a Master Mason. Okay. So a bit like Dine a Friend, when you're bringing a new person potentially into the craft, you can do a Dine a Master Mason. We've got members of the Provincial Stewards Lodge who will go out and talk about or do talks to craft lodges to say, what next to talk about the Royal Arch chapter. But I think we want to keep the independence of the ceremonial, but the governance, the administration, it makes sense to streamline. And if you think about it, up till 18 months ago, we were, 6 craft areas and 8 Royal Arch areas. And we're now 6 craft and Royal Arch areas, so the same. So from that point of view, if you're a Royal Arch mentor in a chapter, you have then someone in your area who looks after Royal Arch matters in your area. But it's all linked within the structure.
Yes.
So you have an assistant Provincial Grand Master, you have a Royal Arch chairman of the Royal Arch, and a chairman of the craft, and we should all be working together. And that will eventually drive up the numbers. Yeah. But it's about the experience ultimately.
Yeah, the natural move, talking about like wearing regalia in the meeting, in craft lodges, that's what our new tie is, right? Shamelessly plugging in our new tie here.
Yes.
It's representing both right here. I think it's quite important. I think it was a big statement. I really like the whole new integration and something that we always wear and be proud of both, and then to aspire to it as well, because it does give something to aspire. If I was a younger Mason that just came in and I see this tie, ask about it, I'm like, yeah, this is including both of the organization. It's something that you should aspire to. I think that's a great signal.
No, traditionally we've always had a tie with a motive on it, the Hampshire and Isle of Wight crest. That's right. And there was a feeling that because of this One Journey, One Organisation, we wanted to make a statement.
Yes.
And the statement was, if you look at the tie, we want light blue representation, dark blue representation, and chapter representation. And that's the tie that my executive decided on. Mm-hmm. I didn't make the decision. We made it as an executive. And we sold out.
Yeah.
We've gone, yes. We constantly sell out. But it's great because it's a tie that you can wear any time, but it gives a message, and it is a clear message.
Yes.
And a lot of people say, no, not another Masonic tie. I have a wardrobe full of ties. Not another Masonic tie. It's a symbolic thing more than anything else. And you can wear it, you don't have to wear it.
Yes.
You can wear it any time, as opposed to I can only wear this going to lodge or whatever.
But I heard you say that there's a meaning behind the colors, if I'm not mistaken.
Light blue for the light blues, dark blue, and then red for chapter.
Which I really didn't. I knew it was obviously for craft and chapter with red there, but I didn't think about what's light blue for? It makes total sense now. And I really like the inclusion of all those 3 groups there.
Absolutely.
For me, it just lit up today when you said that. I was like, it never dawned on me.
Look, you'll never please everybody with this sort of thing. But all I can tell you is that we keep selling out, so we must be doing. It must be doing something wrong.
Yeah, we are.
One of the other big things
and you can wear it in either. You can wear it in,
true.
And that's the issue. Yeah. You wear it either craft or chapter.
One of the other big initiatives that we've seen this year is the signing of the Armed Forces Covenant,
yes,
which you've been deeply involved in. How is that? How did that come about, and what does that mean for us?
We have a lot of veterans and serving members of the Armed Forces, and I'd also, we mustn't forget those in the blue light services, so police, ambulance, fire, and prison service. So our ethics, our ethos, our values are very similar to those in the forces. It's about service, it's about integrity, it's about comradeship, fellowship. And of course, Hampshire, Isle of Wight is a very military province. Mm-hmm. So, with the Navy at Portsmouth, with the Army at Winchester and Aldershot, with the Air Force at RF Odium, traditionally we're very, very strong as a military county, and so is the Isle of Wight. So we have 17 military lodges. And in fact, they founded an additional lodge on the Isle of Wight called 𝗬𝗍𝗳𝗂𝗍, and it's called 𝗬𝗍𝗳 Services, which includes all of those things, Army, Navy, Air Force, the Blue Light Services, and things like Coast Guard, and etc. So I think those values are dear to the heart of Masons and those who've served and are serving in the forces, regular or reserve. So it was a natural thing for us to, when we were asked to help out, in fact, we volunteered to help the Royal British Legion for the annual Poppy Appeal in November, both on the island and the mainland. And we said, we'd like to be involved. And they welcomed us with open arms. And on the formal launch day, we launched in Portsmouth. We then launched in Aldershot. We launched in Cowes and Southampton. And we had masses of Masons, both male and female. So we had the Lady Masons there as well in Portsmouth at the launch. And the British Legion just said, we don't really know much about you guys. Some knew, some didn't. And we formed this partnership. And so we will help them again next year. And that was on the back of 3 years ago, I'd signed the Armed Forces Covenant, which was to all businesses and charities, which basically said, look, we want to support our armed forces. And we want to make it as a organisation friendly and welcoming and caring. And I'd signed it in Winchester in 2022, and I signed it in Cowes in 2022. And we hadn't done a great deal, and I was a bit frustrated with it. So I said to one of my APGMs, Duncan Lilly, who's ex-parachute regiment, I said, Duncan, you've got to get a committee together and crack on and sort something out. And he organised a brilliant dinner in October where we got one of the assistant Grand Masters, John Thompson, down, and we invited service charities to meet with us, Royal Naval Association, Royal British Legion, and we raised some money for them. And then we did this work around the Poppy Appeal. And it just seems a natural partnership. And guess what? Some of them have said they're interested in becoming Masons. And some of our Masons have said, we want to help out in local branches and things. So it's a true partnership, and we're really pleased with it.
It's an interesting juxtaposition that we're strengthening our ties to those communities at the same time that we will have seen in the national press that Metropolitan police officers and perhaps staff have got to declare their membership of Freemasonry moving forward. And I wonder, what would you say, perhaps, what is the provincial or perhaps even the Grand Lodge message to those Masons who now may feel that there is a friction between their professional lives and Masonry that maybe wasn't there last week?
Yeah, I think, you'd have seen the response from Grand Lodge yesterday. So it's fair to say we had a meeting with the Met. So our Grand Secretary met with the Met Police a month or so ago. We've had dialogue with them. And we wanted to have more dialogue, but they were very clear that they were going to make us a declarable organisation. And I'm not going to get into the politics of that, apart from to say that we take a view, and we've got to think it through, but we take a view that, why are we being,
singled out? And
what we're going to do is that, we're going to take some professional advice and we're going to see where we go with it. But I think, locally as well, we have to make a stance, because I can remember when I became a magistrate, Justice of the Peace. At my interview, I was asked whether I was a Freemason. And I said yes. And I went home to my wife and said, I don't think I'll get it. And I became a magistrate and still serving. And then 3 or 4 years later, we had a form came out to all judges and magistrates where we had to redeclare our membership. And they found it was a tiny percentage, an absolute tiny percentage of judges and magistrates who actually were Freemasons.
Yes.
And then they got rid of it. And we have been down this path before with the police. It's come up sort of 20, 30 years ago in the news that, what is Freemasonry doing? Is it right that police should be Freemasons, etc.? So we know this path, and we are going to continue to meet with the Met, and we are going to make a stance. So watch this space.
And it speaks to, I think, the fact that there are still misconceptions out there about what Freemason is and why we chose to join. But also, perhaps, there is something to be said for serving Masons to be more open and vocal about their own membership. I think too many of us, even newer members like myself, are still slightly reluctant to acknowledge it outright until we know that someone isn't hostile. And maybe if we're just more open about the existence of the craft and our participation, over time, those barriers break down because it becomes a more normal part of society.
I agree with you. And we've always respected an individual's rights. And it's up to each of us, isn't it, to decide whether we tell our extended family, friends, whatever, whether we're Freemasons. And, you know, I haven't worn it on my sleeve, but I've always, when asked, been honest and said, yes, I am. And of course, now with social media, people see it all the time. So it is more difficult. And I do understand the reticence because it's a personal decision. But as an organization, the last 20 years or so, we've got so much better at opening our doors, particularly our headquarters in Covent Garden, Freemasons Hall. And, you know, our own comms and PR people are out there all the time now. And we have nothing to hide. And in fact, we've got so much to be proud about. I mean, years and years ago, it was just say nothing, you know, head down, say nothing. That's changed. That's changed. And, you know, we say to people, you know, we fundamentally believe in supporting the law of the land, the sovereign of the land, and being a community partner, helping your neighbour and your friend and being part of the community. And those are our values, in essence. And actually, we should make sure people know about those.
100%. I think like that as well. Before, like James said, I was reluctant to tell people, but reading upon Freemasons' history, I challenged myself, and I just felt this calling just to share it, right time, right spaces, with people that I care about, or I know will become friends, or even at my workplace now. I don't care anymore because as a person and as a man, I've been cultivated so well in this organization that it would be a detriment to myself and to my fellow brother or fellow man that if I didn't tell them about this opportunity for them for self-improvement and brotherhood, what's the point? What's the point? Like, why would I withhold something that could make your life better?
Yeah.
So I'm very open about it. Don't get me wrong. Sometimes I'm a bit like, oh, okay, maybe you shouldn't say it. But no, we've been persecuted. We've been persecuted in history. And sometimes I feel that we're gonna have highs and lows. But I decided to make a stand, and I will tell everybody and anyone and what our values are. And what I've encountered is only one negative experience that I've had in the last 4 years.
Okay.
Who I find very receptive to Freemasonry, believe it or not, is actually women when we talk about our values. And they've been the strongest supporters of Freemasonry in my experience. The lads, sometimes we have to educate a bit more. And I don't know what it is about our brains that sometimes we're a little bit like, oh, this group of guys, it's like joining a team at the end of the day. That's how we think, right? But then when we start having our pitch of why it's good for a man and what it's done for yourself personally, I think that is the selling point. And I don't like to say selling point. That is the invitation for a man to start thinking about Freemasonry. And this has been a year. Sometimes I've been talking to a mate of mine about Freemasonry, and he's like, "Oh, now I'm ready to take the initiative to join a lodge because I see you're very happy. You talk about your brethren and all these great opportunities you have for connection. Nothing else about Freemasonry, because what I love Freemasonry, in my opinion, is, you know, the pop in circumstance. There's something great that it just makes you feel so good. But in reality, it's the connections that we make as men and for our values. And that's what we always have to espouse, because that's what's lacking right now in the world.
Yeah. And where else would you find such a cross-section of people in one room? You're never quite sure when I go to a lodge or a chapter who I'm going to be sat with. And it's great.
Yeah.
And when you start understanding and have conversations about what they do and their interests, and you learn something. And I always say to my new teams, you know, whether my active officers in craft or the chapter, you know, when we go out to visits, don't sit with the same people. Yeah. Sit with someone new, because you learn something from someone new, you know, and certainly I have. And we offer this amazing antidote to isolation and loneliness, because if there's a sense of belonging, you know, that we can offer, and I think in a younger generation of men, that's required now.
There's a key to all this. I really do think so, and I think guys are very uncomfortable with the word vulnerability, but that's what it is. And vulnerability, it looks differently for everyone.
Oh.
And honestly, it's just being a little bit more open. You're having a challenge or something, tell a brother. Tell him a little bit more, or whoever you're comfortable with. And that opens your world, and you most likely will find solutions to, or feel better of what you're going through, good and bad.
Can I just go back to what you said about the women's Freemasonry? So last year, Grand Lodge formed a council of Freemasonry, which includes Scotland, but also the two women's organisations. And it's really important. So, you know, the Program Master with his representatives, the Grand Masters of the two women's organisations, Grand Master of Scotland and our Grand Master, you know, they meet regularly. And that would not have happened a few years ago. And the message that gives to the provinces and our districts overseas is that absolutely great to have the women Freemasons by our side. They were there when we launched the Poppy Appeal. They've been there at community events. They're there at, you know, when we're at different fates and whatever, local events, they're there with their stand, we're there with our stand. You know, when people come up and say, oh, you're a men-only organisation, actually talk to our colleagues here, the women Freemasons. And I think that is really, really powerful. You know, they meeting in our own centres now.
Yes.
You know, in my mother lodge, which meets in Basingstoke, you know, the honours board in Basingstoke as the women's past masters up there. It was great. And that wouldn't have happened.
And what I learned is with that council, we're joining forces to answer to some questions about society.
Absolutely.
I learned that recently. I'm like, whoa, this is really cool. This is so much bigger than our craft. It's just, you know, a union of people that love Freemasonry.
Absolutely.
And that's huge. I think when we have a representation of different groups within Freemasonry, especially the women and men, and we join together, that's a powerful force.
Yeah, absolutely.
You mentioned just now Masonic centres, and we're here in that wonderful temple at the Winchester Masonic Centre. Yeah. What do you think are the challenges that the craft faces moving forward in terms of administering its own spaces, consolidating where needed, making sure they're fit for purpose?
I mean, it's tough because wherever you're initiated becomes your mother lodge and your mother centre. So you get, you know, your link is there, isn't it, to that place? You're attached. But the reality, if I put an objective head on, is that we have 38 centres to look after, to manage, to run, to make profitable, to make sure there's health and safety compliant, fire safety compliant, that we've got the right catering there, you know, the buildings are being kept up to scratch. That's really tough because we have half the number of Masons now that we had when those buildings were built and formed. Okay. So therefore, fewer Masons meeting in one centre, the overheads are higher on the individual Mason. And also, you've got to find a committee of people that will, you know, who's going to chair the centre, who's going to be the treasurer, who's going to do the catering, and so that you're pulling on the volunteers, but you're pulling on less volunteers. I mean, I know, I've got centres that are really struggling in this province, financially, really struggling. And I think I'll lose a couple, you know. And when I took over as PGM, one of the things I did was get all the centre chairmen together so that they talk to each other and talk about the same problems they have. We want these to be community assets as well. We want them to be used during the day, but we've got to be compliant. We've got to have someone to let them in, someone to clean the building. And I think some of our centres are not able to do that. They don't have the volunteer to do it. They don't have paid staff to do it. And actually some of the centres are not physically up to scratch. However, there's some light at the end of the tunnel. Grand Lodge is looking at Masonic centres across the country. And we are looking at how we look after some of our heritage centres, some of our very old centres, and some of our heritage aspects within that. And also those centres that are community assets and how we help them, whether it's grant or whatever. So we're looking at that from a Grand Lodge point of view over the next 2 or 3 years. And I think that, A, it's exciting, but B, it's needed. But on a local level, you do have to have the number of lodges, chapters, companion orders, and men joining to support it and make it viable. And on the Isle of Wight, we have 7 centres for 18 lodges. If you're a Freemason in London, predominantly you meet at Freemasons Hall.
Yes.
Well, that's a service building. The catering is done there mostly, or you go outside. It's cleaned, it's administered, security's there.
Yes.
It's all serviced for you. Out in the provinces and districts, we're doing that as volunteers. And if a guy is DC of his lodge and he's chairman of the centre, and there's a lot of pull on his time. So James is clearly, but and I know. I mean, it's great because I hear some weekends, over Christmas, bank holiday weekends, they have working parties where they go in and they start painting the ceiling and doing repairs, and I mean that's great. But it is pulling on time and effort. But you need the number of masons to reduce the overheads ultimately, because otherwise it prices itself out of the. And I've been asked a direct question: do you think we've got too many centres in the province? My answer is yes.
Okay.
For the number of masons now, yes.
So speaking about the number of masons, for the next couple of years, or what do you think we should be doing as lodges? How many guys should we be bringing into our lodges?
The Grand Master recently said at a quarterly communication, every lodge needs 3 candidates a year. And I know, because my feet are on the ground, and I belong to a number of lodges, and people tell me stuff, and they say, 3 a year? Where are we going to find 3 a year? And then I reflect back on my own journey, and my proposer said to me 38 years ago, when he was secretary of the lodge, you need 3 candidates a year. And so that's ringing in my ears. Yeah. And when I became secretary of that lodge, I realized that you needed 3 candidates a year, because one will join and go through, and he'll just love it. Well, most of the time anyway. Another will join and won't like it, and it won't be his thing, and will leave. And then the third may dip in and dip out.
Yes.
So may pay the subs, you might see him once or twice a year, you might not. So actually, in nearly 40 years, the message is the same.
Yeah.
We need that to keep it viable. And of course, the stronger the craft is, the stronger the chapter will be, and the stronger the companion orders will be. Because the chapter and the companion orders are all feeding from the craft. So you need a strong craft from which to grow and develop the rest of Masonry.
I personally have a theme for 2026 for Freemasonry, and it's agility. I think that we need to start thinking in agile terms and start using our guys for solutions. When you're saying, how can we get 3 guys? I personally think it's not a huge challenge, and I'll tell you why. I think the older brethren or the brethren that are running the lodge need to rely on their younger guys, because there is agility out there with social media. We have to go to the guys where they meet, where they have these conversations, and it looks very different from even 5 to 10 years ago. Yep. One of the things that I do when I visit lodges is go talk to the youngest guy in the lodge. Yeah. Why? I get intel of what they're thinking, feeling, what they want to do, because historically, sitting on a board of an American fraternity, the journey starts winding down about 2 years. So first is getting him in, and then have the internal comms, the internal engagement within Freemasonry or fraternity organization. But yeah, agility. We should start pivoting in different ways to see where those guys are living, thinking, breathing, all that. And we have the capacity.
Roddy, you're right, but you have to make sure on top of that. See, we don't really have a problem getting initiates. I mean, the number of initiates we get every year, 400, 450, has been pretty consistent for a number of years. You have to make sure when they join that they have a quality ceremony.
Yes.
All right. They are welcomed.
So many layers.
Right? It's a quality meal in terms of, it's a quality environment in which to meet. So we normally can nail that on the night, because most Masons will say to you, yeah, I can remember my initiation, it was fantastic. It's then the follow-up. It's got to be the follow-up. Yes. But I do agree with you about, in terms of bringing people in, and it is that young generation, that new generation. Yeah. An initiate will be able to recruit an initiate. They are our best recruits. Light blues are our best recruits. Yeah. That hasn't always been encouraged. I think of my own experiences, I had a candidate to bring in my mother lodge, and it was, well, how long have you known him? You've only just become a Master Mason, John. You're not qualified yet to bring a member in. Well, that's rubbish as far as I'm concerned. Yeah. The best recruiters are those who've been through the process recently, who are out perhaps in the working environment, they're available, they know who's around, and they want to share that with their colleagues. And I think because we were being closed in our membership and we didn't really talk about it, now that we're encouraging people to talk about it, be more open, then you'd say, well, what did you do last time? I joined a lodge last night. What do you mean a lodge? Well, I was initiated. Well, what do you mean? And therefore it starts a conversation. And I think it's key. And when I'm doing visits to lodges privately or officially, I'm the same. I go to the light blues, I talk to the light blues, and I find out what they're doing, where they've been. And then I say, who have you brought into Masonry? Ooh. And sometimes they say to me, are we allowed? And I look at them and I say, of course you're allowed. Yeah. Of course you're allowed. Because you are our lifeblood for the future.
Yes. Speaking of light blues.
Yep.
What's going on in the province with light blues?
Good question. Each area, because we're so large, because we've got 6 areas. Each area runs its own light blue version. Some focus very much on supporting lodges that are struggling. Okay. Others support lodges for initiations. And when I mean support, I mean also taking office as well as attending. Others have light blue events. So some areas do light blue events. So we've got a bit of a mix, if I'm honest.
Yeah.
Smaller provinces, and I'm talking about provinces with 30, 40, 50 lodges, can have a provincial light blues club. We've shied away from that as a province because of our geography.
Okay.
My view is that as long as there's a focus of light blues, so that when you become a Master Mason or when you join, someone gets in touch with you and says, hey, we're having a curry next week and we're going bowling, or this is what we're doing. There needs to be some activity. You mentioned it earlier on about the social side and social aspect. There has to be that aspect to it. Because otherwise they join something and then it's, well, we don't meet for a month. Oh, and we're doing a third. So you spend most of your time now sat outside.
Yeah.
So if you're joining something, you need to make sure it's quite regular.
Regular, yeah. So that's what we have, the North Circulars, the South Circular.
That's right, North Circular.
And I just met Reese Warren, that him and some other guys from Portsmouth started the Asher Club. And they want to get more social. It was really interesting. Yeah. And what I really like about what Reese is doing is that he's going to different lodges around his area and giving presentations about the Asher Club. Yeah. I'm like, this is really fantastic. And I'm really happy to let you know it's for 45 and unders. All right. Brilliant. Yeah. So I
just sneak in.
We just just. So it's pretty cool to have an initiative.
But can I go as a guest speaker?
Of course, you're always welcome. But what I love about the message and what these guys are doing is that they saw an opportunity and they decided to do it. Right. And I think that, again, sometimes we have this unspoken feeling in Freemasonry that I maybe have to wait to do something, and you should. But if you have a good idea and you think it's going to work, go ask someone to help you.
Absolutely. I mean, Basingstoke, you just reminded me, Basingstoke have just done that. There's 2 or 3 light blues in Basingstoke, got together, said, do you know what? We want to meet on a Saturday morning once a month, bacon roll and coffee. Yeah. And what we're going to do is we're going to have someone in to talk about something. And they've done a number of talks, and then they've started visiting other areas, but they've set it up themselves, and it's grown and grown. And so they've gone around the 5 lodges in Basingstoke. So this is who we are, this is what we're doing. And now the secretaries of those lodges put the end apprentices, fellow crafts, master masons in touch with these contacts. And they're doing that on a centre basis, which may be easier for travelling.
Yes.
But they've sort of set it up as a informal, speaking club and get together. And sometimes there's 10, 12 there, sometimes there's 30 there. It doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
But I'd encourage that. And, it's not about asking for permission. It's just about saying, this is what we want to do. You got any advice or support? Because you know what? Someone's probably doing it somewhere else.
Yeah, exactly.
And we can learn from that. But I don't intend to have a provincial light blues club. I just think the 7,700 is too big.
It's too big, yeah.
And it then becomes a bureaucracy. And then we'd have to have a committee and organise. And and you lose it. What I like about these light blue clubs, and an example of the Asher Club in Basingstoke, is the informality.
Yes.
And the relaxed sort of atmosphere and environment. And I think that's how it should be.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's certainly an exciting time to be a light blue in the province. And on that subject, I have one final question to ask you, if I may.
Yes.
And that's, since you last appeared on the podcast, you've become the president of the Board of General Purposes. And I wondered, what does that role involve? How did you find yourself in it? And how does it synergize with your role as Provincial Grand Master?
I was on the Board of General Purposes as a PGM.
So that is the committee that sort of manages Freemasonry.
So it basically looks after everything bar ceremonial.
Okay.
So we're looking after the governance. So, they're rewriting the book Constitutions at the moment. So we have the governance with the financial aspect. So that's the running of Freemasons Hall and, setting the dues for lodges and chapters, that sort of thing. We have the property investment side. Mm-hmm. So we have that amazing iconic building, Art Deco building that will be 100 years old very soon, and a property portfolio locally that we have to manage with 120 staff who are working in Freemasons Hall, the cafe, the museum, behind the scenes, registration, secretariat. So it is, it's a Masonic business, and the board is made up of up to 12 people. There's a president, a deputy, PGM, 3 PGMs on it, a representative from Metropolitan Grand Lodge, and then the Grand Treasurer, and a couple of independents. So someone looks after the property side, and president of the chapter, a committee of general purposes, which is the chapter. Mm-hmm. So that's our role, financial governance. Grand Lodge is makes the rules, but we're the board that puts it together, implements, and then recommends. And so therefore at quarterly communication, I have to present the business aspect, which is voted on by members of Grand Lodge. I was the deputy president, and the president resigned, and so I had a call to ask me to be the president. And it's what you do, isn't it? You say yes. So I said yes to Jonathan Spence, and I take it very seriously. It's a big workload, but I work very closely with the Grand Secretary, mm-hmm. Very closely with my deputy, very closely with the committee heads. So there's a chair of audit and risk, a chair of remuneration, investment, library and museum. I suddenly found myself on the library as a trustee of the library and museum. I found myself on the membership working party. By the way, John, you need, there's 4 meetings a year for the external relations, which is the overseas districts. So my diary did increase dramatically. But there are times in the province where, my job is here and the province has to come first. And I know recently I had a conflict where I had a centenary of a lodge, and I should have been in London at a meeting. And I said, I'm sorry, it's a centenary of a lodge. The brethren will expect me to be there. I'm the PGM, I have to be there. And when the official visits go in my diary for chapter and craft, and they take priority.
Yes.
But sometimes, I need to be in London, and I accept that. The meetings are normally set. And I'm fortunate that I have the time to balance it. But yeah, it's certainly stretching me. I'm learning a whole different side about Masonry.
Yeah.
It means I work with some great people and I get to know the PGMs well. One of the things I've been involved in recently is training for new PGMs and Grand Superintendents. So I'm a Grand Secretary and I are doing that. But yeah, I mean, you're told that you'll make a daily advancement when you join Freemasonry. And I'm still, after 38 years, making a daily advancement. But it's a huge privilege, but it's also a responsibility. And we're looking forward to, it's the future of the craft. Mm-hmm. But I never forget my roots, and that is my roots are here, and it's important to listen to our members. It's our members' money, and we have to think about the future and the way we're going, and we have to listen to the feedback. And we won't always get it right, but it's really important that we're a membership organisation. We have royal patronage, and we have this 300 plus years of immense tradition. And I feel very proud to be a Mason, very proud to be PGM Grand Superintendent, very proud to be President of the Board. But I accept that everything is for a period of time in your life. Yes. So my view is that you do it to the best of your ability while you're in those jobs. It's like being Provincial Master of a lodge or Zerubbabel. That year you do the best that you can. And then you will hand it on to someone else. Then you can sit back and do whatever, enjoy it. But yeah, I mean, you've asked me before, I enjoy what I do. So otherwise I wouldn't do it.
Well, you'll be pleased to know that the time of your life spent in front of television cameras is about to come to an end. How have you found it?
I'm very pleased. Do you know what? You guys make it very, very straightforward.
Glad.
I have to say this morning, I said to Lynn, she said, what are you doing? I said, I'm going to be interviewed. And she thought it would just be a podcast. I said, no, it's TV. So she said, oh, you'll really love that. So no, you guys have made it very helpful, and I appreciate you two leading me through it, but also the guys sat over there who've done all the backup stuff and set it up. So my thanks, I've really enjoyed it.
Oh, thank you for coming.
Yeah, and I think it's worth saying, Roddy and I are very grateful that you've allowed us to do this podcast for the past year. I hope you'll allow us to come back for a season 2 next year. But as always, it's been fascinating having you here and nice to hear you talk. So Thank you for joining us again.
Thank you for what you're doing.
Very much.
Thank you.
Roddy, that brings us to the end of season 1 of Crafted in the South. I'm a little emotional. Are you not?
I am. It's been a fantastic year. I mean, we've learned so much, but also I think that we've teased out so much information for the brethren. This podcast, we didn't know how it was going to go.
We didn't.
But it's been having such great reception. We see on Spotify all the comments that we get from brethren, and they're so excited. And it's fantastic to go, travel around the province and have these conversations when the guys recognize us, our voices are like, oh, how's this and that? And it gives you a different perspective. And I'm quite humbled by the positive comments that we've gotten from the province. And thank you guys so much for listening to us, because you guys, again, are giving just a little bit more of your time when you could be with your family or doing something for yourself. Again, a huge thank you.
Yeah, we've got an exciting year to come next year. We're going to dive even deeper into the Holy Royal Arch. Perhaps we'll talk a little bit about some of the other companion orders and the wider Masonic journey. But for now, I think it's a very happy Christmas and a peaceful New Year to everybody.
Christmas.
To you, indeed, Provincial Grand Master. And as always, for this season, Roddy and I have been happy to meet.
Sorry to part.
Happy to meet again.
See you next year, brethren.
See you next year.